who better to help us break it all down? JC Shurburtt of the Big Spur inside the Gamecocks. JC, first thing, man, I'm so excited to have you on. Not just in the season, but I'm glad we're continuing doing this because, like I mentioned, man, it never stops. Truly, it never stops. People ask me all the time, do you ever run out of things to talk about? I'm like, for the diehard, there's always something to talk about, especially when you're looking for a new offensive coordinator. JC Shurburtt inside the Gamecocks. What's going on, my friend? How you doing?
Great, Chris, and certainly happy to continue this with you. Especially, it used to be that it was a busy time of year, coaching change wise. Right now, recruiting was going to heat up, but more so in January. Now it's all right here at once. You got bowls, coaching changes, portal, NIL. You have everything, and then signing day is in 13 days. So the signing period starts then. So. It's been a very busy time. Obviously, a lot of talk about the new offensive coordinator. A lot of news out there about Arkansas. Am I back, or was I gone,
Yeah,
or
we're
was that
good.
just
Yeah, I don't
was
know
that
what just happened.
was that just you?
The
I
line.
tried to carry it. You disappeared. I just kept
Yeah,
talking.
I don't know what just. I don't know
Hey,
what just happened.
that's happened to me. It's like when you're
Just
like on the piano and the lead singer's mic goes out. You got to vamp a little bit, right?
yeah. I figured you would carry the team.
Yeah, there we go.
We're back. We're back.
But a lot of talk about Dowell Loggins as the OC. I can tell you last night I reported, and Chris, I just had to, I quit calling myself a journalist a while back because I don't think it fits what I do, and I don't like most
Don't put yourself in a box.
Most of the journalists out there anyway. But I have a background in it, so I had to kind of just be a reporter last night. I didn't even want to comment on this, but I put it about 97%. I thought it was trucking toward imminent. Just now, I kind of got some information. It's not as high up the food chain as people think, but I think we sort of, because of that sports flights, which is sports flights is a fun account to follow, but they're not trying to break scoop. They probably had no idea South Carolina had an offensive coordinator search. They just tweet out, like, when the 76ers are going to the Lakers, they tweet the plane's flight plan. It's kind of a cool account, and they just so happened to tweet the Gamecocks plane that had the tail number blocked on FlightAware, by the way. You can't track it on FlightAware. I don't know how they track it. Rolling out of Northwest Arkansas yesterday afternoon. And so that set off a firestorm because, everybody thought Kendall Browse, and Dowell Loggins has been a guy that Dowell Loggins has been a guy that has been on the list too. And, so we kind of put two and two together, and it's like we were told, no, I don't think it's going to be Kendall Browse. And so that left one guy, unless they're out there looking at guys from the portal, and maybe they were. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons for the plane to be out there, but so then you start asking people and running his name by people and all that, and then you start kind of figuring out that based on your responses that this thing looks like it's going to happen. And so it isn't as high up the food chain as people may think. There's no contract or anything right now. It just looks like within the next week, this is the most likely scenario. So that's the latest I have on that. I kind of, like I said, when I got off the show, I got a little more piece of information about the flagpole, the symbolic flagpole, right? So it's not that far up the chain yet, but I think that, like I said, I still believe right now it to be imminent. As close to imminent as imminent gets. How about that?
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you, JC, was just in regards to like a percentage or just an overall feeling. How likely do you think it is? Because like I hate to, as I mentioned to you this morning, I hate to lose my cool over something that may not even happen, but it's definitely sounding like there's enough traction to believe that it almost at this point it'd be a surprise maybe if he wasn't the guy. Is that?
Yeah, I don't know that I would be completely like floored. Just, I mean, sometimes things get out and people see the reaction, and because you should never let your fans pick your coaches, right? That should never happen. But nor should it, right? But then there's a difference between like, not letting fans get to you and not letting the opinions of the masses, and then something that's kind of like a hire that negatively impacts the psyche of the entire organization through no fault of the person you're going to hire. It's just based on the resume. And so that's another consideration. I don't, I had it at 97% last night. I'd probably say 92 right now, just based on what I heard earlier about it not reaching the highest levels. But, I didn't look. I hope, if it changes, hey, you're talking to somebody who'll kind of breathe a sigh of relief because, the one thing about the search that I said, I didn't really have a favorite or anybody like that. I have guys I like and don't. But was that long, established track record of running offenses at the college level that produce. And you look at you look up Dowell Loggins, and there's no college track record except 2 years at Arkansas. And he was offensive coordinator for 4 different NFL teams. None of them averaged over 20 points, I don't think. Was kind of an Adam Gase guy. And I'm not a big Adam Gase guy at all. So you don't know how much that was him. That was Gase. They were bad football teams, Chris. I mean, you need players, right? Those were bad NFL football teams but he did last 10 years up there. But it just doesn't fit kind of what I personally, and I think most of the fan base had in mind when Marcus Satterfield left. And I think some people were just concerned. Maybe, I don't know if scared's the right word, but, it's been so positive. And a lot of times around here, we wait for the other shoe to drop. Everybody under the sun knew the issues the first 10 games this past year. Then they fixed it, and you saw what happened. So nobody wants to revert to that, okay? And I think when you use those 3 letters, NFL, and then you look at the results at that level weren't good, it scares people because they don't want to look at bad offense anymore. And bad offense cost them some opportunities this year. And if Rattler and Wells and Lloyd come back, Chris, they have a chance to have a really special season. And I think people are just concerned about that because they're passionate and love their team, and they want everything just right, and they want that reassurance. So, but yeah, I still think it's going to happen right now. But like I said, I've never said lock. It looks imminent, and those are from, I didn't just kind of call up my agent buddy and what are you hearing in the agent world? It's kind of universal. I'll just give you 3 sources at Carolina and 4 at Arkansas. So that's 7. So I think based on that feedback, many of whom are my best contacts, on both ends. So that's kind of why I said what I said, and the percentage I have, what I have.
JC, switching gears a little bit, how much fun is it for you when stuff like this is going on? And because we see all the madness on Twitter, but the message boards obviously are just a frenzy when stuff like this is happening. I mean, it's got to be chaos, but fun also for you on the message board side of things. And I think it's funny too. It's like you guys are on the message boards, and it's like these screenshots leak or whatever. But I know you were having a good time last night.
Yeah, and I tried to stay kind of. Last night I tried to let people vent. Sometimes, people go way over the top, but I try to let people vent. And last night I just kind of got into this Zen moment because it was late, man. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm just going to let these guys, I'm just going to talk to them, and I'm going to agree with a lot of what they say. And that was actually a good conversation. I don't know if it calmed anybody down because I woke up this morning. It's like, oh my God. But yeah, it gets melted down pretty quick. And I think it's just because, hey, a lot's happened to this fan base. If everybody thinks about it, the last 10 years with, you see your 2 best rivals become national powers and host the Crystal football at the end of the year, that messes with your psyche because you had been beating them pretty regularly. That messes with your psyche when you're 3-9 or 2-8 or 4-8 and everybody else is going to the playoff, and you finally get some hope and joy and results bring hope and joy too. And things happen this year that hadn't happened. Happened in a while, and you don't want to lose it. And I think it's a product too, Chris, of some of the, some people think people on message boards just don't know. They're kind of the opposite. They're diehards. They consume every piece of information like they're watching a game, first down, second down, and they rise and fall emotionally based on it because they just love it so much. And so I think that when you care that much about something, it does manifest itself sometimes into a meltdown, but it's really just people caring a whole lot.
Yeah, JC, I've always said with everything with Gamecocks athletics and really being a sports fan, but specifically with the Gamecocks, there are three different ways to look at things. There's the garnet glasses way, everything is sunshine and rainbows. There's the doom and gloom way, everything is the sky is falling. And then there's the middle, and I try to stay in the middle. I know you try to stay in the middle, and a lot of our audience, I'd say most of our audience, very critical thinkers that see things for what they are, not as they want them to be. So when I look at this, let's just say it is Dowell. I've been messing up it. Yeah, Loggins.
It's like
I've been saying Goggins. I don't know why.
I called him Walton Goggins the other day, and it's he's the actor from Vice Principals,
Yeah.
But it's Dowell Loggins, like Kenny Loggins.
Yeah,
so
Dowell
like
Loggins. I was just gonna say though that I think we're all to the point where because of the way the season finished and what Shane Beamer has done in such a short time, we all trust Shane Beamer. Like it's Beamer ball to the moon. He's the head football coach. He's getting paid to make the decisions. While saying that, I think it's also fair. Like I'm not going to come down on anyone or say anyone's unreasonable for JC just feeling underwhelmed, especially when you're selling this, I've been getting all these calls. This position's so much sexier than it was 2 years ago. Like, and then you get a guy that it's like when you have to convince yourself it's a good hire, and then you look at his track record and resume, like you mentioned, like you said, it's not a guarantor of what's going to happen in the future, but it's something that makes you a little bit uneasy, and I think that's a fair feeling from this fan base right now.
Yeah, and think about this. I mean, you go through, and I won't even go back to the Spurrier era because going back to then, one thing the head ball coach did was it frustrated a lot of people. He would kind of shuffle play calling game to game, which was weird because sometimes he'd lose confidence. He'd be like, "Oh shoot, Bubba, you call it," and like all of a sudden, or GA would call it, and you could always tell the difference between when one of those two guys, but I'm not even going to go back there. I'll start with Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp has a disastrous year at Florida or run at Florida based largely on a terrible offense. All right. Most people didn't even realize Kurt Roper was only there his last year, only 1 year. But he hires the OC from Florida. So that's immediately a red flag, right? Well, so then that experiment ends. And Eli Drinkwitz was probably coming as the OC, but Brian McClendon, they win the Outback Bowl. Everybody almost promote. Well, there's another experiment, right? That did not end well. Mike Bobo comes in, and unfortunately, a global pandemic hits. He doesn't have any receivers. I thought he did the best he could. Well, then he leaves, and there was kind of hard feelings about all that because he started Colin Hill. People didn't like that. I mean, he was probably the best of the bunch and would have been the most consistent, but there were other things that doomed him. So that's not an experiment, but it wasn't a successful hire. It didn't turn out well. So then Satterfield, right? Another experiment. Guy was assistant offensive line coach with the Panthers. He comes back and you hear Lincoln Riley meets Joe Brady, and then everybody from the Rams, the Cowboys. I don't even know what I was in that playbook. And we saw what happened when finally, they said, all right, strip it down, run it like a college. You saw what happened. And so then everybody's kind of like, all right, no more experiments. This is it's time to just go get a guy. And then there's a lot of good players that could come back. So time to take it to the next level. And, another experiment, another guy that, that you got to kind of project. And it's like, man, when you hired Steve Spurrier, you knew kind of what he's done. When you hired Lou Holtz, you could look at Skip Holtz's offense at Connecticut and wherever else and kind of realize what they've done. These days, you just all these guys they've hired, you kind of have to guess. And I think people are tired of guessing. So that's kind of my take on it.
For some reason, I just had this pop in my head. It's like maybe Beamer's like those people that that when they get in relationships, they're always the people that they're trying to fix the other person. You know what I mean? That's kind of they just for whatever reason they run from whole well individuals. They want to fix the guy. They want to fix it's almost like let's take this broke. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad analogy.
No, I think if it turns out bad. I don't know. A lot of it depends on how it turns out. I said today, I said, watch this. It's like Gamecock Nation. You sort of feel like Carolina lost 50-0 on the field yesterday, and half the starters are out with injuries for the year, and all that. But that's kind of the mood today, and the guy hadn't even been hired yet, and all that. And I said, watch next year. We'll be sitting here with Dowell Loggins T-shirts on, but that we got from Chris, sitting there waiting to do a road trip to Pasadena for the Rose Bowl and playoff, and it's like Loggins mania, right? Because that's the issue. I just don't know. I know enough from the people I've talked to that don't get scared off by the words pro style offense. There's a lot of Alabama. Their offense looks like a lot of fun, right? They run a pro style offense. I mean, but what I was told was, this guy, the problems, the fundamental problems with Satterfield and the burdensome, slow moving, personnel package driven, type of offense, that's not what the intent is here. But at the same time, I don't think I'd encourage anybody to go back and look at the 17 Bears and get excited about that. It's just it's one of those things where it's not going to be the same thing as Satterfield. It's an unknown because this guy's never called a college game. So it's like, well, how do you kind of you can't figure it out. You just have to again wish and hope and pray. And because of what's happened previously, Chris, it's a really difficult sell for the fan base. I think it's one they'll get through. But right now, I totally understand why people are just, kind of not so high on it.
Wish and hope and pray, JC. Oh,
hey, that's the state motto, man.
Why is that always the strategy?
It's South Carolina. It's the state motto. Dum spiro spiro. While I breathe, I hope.
That's it.
A lot of hope, man. A lot of hope. But,
my God. All right. We've talked enough about the OC. Let's because a lot has happened this week, obviously, man. Yeah. The transfer portal opened up Monday, and boy, it has not disappointed thus far. Over 1,000 guys, I think it is, or something like that in the portal. We're seeing all kinds of top-notch quarterbacks and big-time playmakers, and the Gamecocks have been no exception. It started with Austin Stogner and then Jaheim Bell following his lead. Those are the most notable. We've seen other guys like Cam Hardy, a few others that are slipping my mind right now. Just talk about the way the transfer portal has affected Carolina, and then obviously the decisions from Stogner and then Jaheim Bell being the most notable, just everything you've heard on that end, and just overall thoughts on the portal.
Yeah, with Austin Stogner, I thought he'd try to take a shot at the NFL, turn pro. Okay, so that was my first initial thought when he walked. I kind of felt like Chris because the guy, he kind of peaked during the Missouri game, and then was one of those players that started all of a sudden mysteriously getting their snaps limited for whatever reason, and played a lot down the stretch, but didn't make the impact maybe as a Nate Atkins did. And I think Austin needs to get stronger and a little faster before he goes to the NFL. But I thought he'd just go anyway. Then he hit the portal, and apparently he's going to go back home and play at Oklahoma, which is the school he came from, and wanting to be closer to home, I don't blame him. I think that anytime you get a player that's far, far from your campus, when things don't go swimmingly, you run the risk of them transferring the further they are away. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so that was that. Now, Jaheim Bell, I mean, not only did we check with Jaheim's inner circle, I guess, about 2:00 that day. He was selling T-shirts at 12:30, and then I'm on a group chat, and somebody had tweeted one of those. Somebody, to put it not, somebody got like rickrolled on the group chats. We're all laughing, and then somebody posted Jaheim's goodbye or whatever. Where I'm going to go in the portal thing, and people were laughing. We thought it was a joke. It's like, no, unfortunately, it's true. And so I'm like, good God. And so the exit was there. I think his usage this year laid the groundwork for this. See, this is why you do need to make a good offensive coordinator hire. That's important because usage matters. And I think that laid the groundwork. And then I think NIL opportunities kind of pushed it over the top. And I want to say that did facilitate a groundswell of support for the collectives. But I'll also tell people this, the facts behind that are it's not like Bell had this, offer or whatever that Carolina could not afford to match or anything like that from an NIL perspective. There was no choice given. I mean, he just left. So I mean, don't there does need to be NIL money. Perhaps if he was on some kind of deal here, he would have been more hesitant to leave. But that there was no like instant amount of cash that was going to save that situation. So best of luck to him, and also thanks to all the Gamecocks that have given to Carolina Rise and continue to do so. Because, like I said, I don't know if that prevents that from happening, but it would have made it a little bit more tricky, I think, for him to just bolt the portal for financial gain and what he considers to be football gain.
Yeah, and I think the thing that sucks the most, JC, is like you mentioned, just the usage and that. We all would have loved to have seen him back in Garnet and Black because you really do feel like that. You mentioned with Rattler, Wells, Lloyd, it sounds like there's a good chance they're all going to be back. Man, Jaheim Bell could have been a lot of fun to watch in that offense, and if used properly, I mean, I think we both agree he's a guy that, at minimum, could be an all-conference guy, maybe even be an all-American type caliber player. And so is he, is it impossible to replace him? No, but somebody's going to get a good football player. I mean, that's kind of what it boils down to.
Absolutely. Visiting Florida State, I think, this weekend. So maybe it's not the Gators, maybe it's the Noles. So that would be, I think, for Gamecock fans, you'd rather him go to Florida State than go to a division opponent, right?
Yeah. JC, as the head of one of the top NIL collectives, if you will, for the University of South Carolina Rise, I definitely want to give you an opportunity just to chat on it and discuss. And because I still think, even at this point, there is not quite as much understanding with NIL, and I don't know if there's anybody really to blame, because I just feel like NIL, it's such a new thing, right? Like, because this is more of an NCAA thing, but it's so interesting. Like, when this was rolled out, there weren't any guidelines. There was no rhyme or reason. There was no rule book. It's just the wild, wild west.
Man.
When you look at pro sports, like, guys are paid according on production and tenure, and when you're drafted, there's slots and there's certain money that goes with it. And obviously, when people heard NIL, it's like, oh, this will be a great opportunity for Joey to go partner with the car dealership and use his name, image, and likeness, and it's evolved into something completely different. So just give people, I'll give you the floor to expand on NIL, all the collectives, obviously yours specifically, but what people need to be doing, what they need to know. Like, is there any pressing information? Because obviously NIL, it's not just some fun thing. It's directly affecting where guys go to school and where they choose to play their college ball at.
Absolutely. And then it's important. Now, I do agree with your stance that, as far as, because I do see people sometimes, I don't know, shaming other fans because they don't believe in it for not giving and stuff. And look, I appreciate all the people that are militant about joining and trying to get other people to join, because that helps the collective. I mean, I don't make any money off of it. All the money I get goes to players. It's just, I'm kind of the facilitator, but I care about getting deals in the hands of players. So I do want to say that, if your buddy is trying to get you to join a collective and you don't feel like that's in your heart, or if you can't afford it financially, don't do it. Everybody should still love you, man. It's all big family, right? So I agree with your stance on that, because fans support in many, many ways, and you're asking them to do one more thing. So what happens is, when you join Carolina Rise, it's like a club. You're in the NIL collective club. We have some drawings and stuff. You get some limited perks, right? Because really it's just about taking that money and providing what I call promotional opportunities for the players. My philosophy on it is maximum dollar amounts for least amount of time spent. We're living in a world, Chris, where an Instagram influencer with however many followers, she can get $100,000 for a post, right? Doesn't take any time, but that's money. And that's kind of what I envision this with Carolina Rise is. I have dozens of affiliated businesses that we partner with that these guys go and promote or whatever, and it's quick and easy, and puts money in their pocket. And I think that's the best way to do it. The other two collectors, they all have different philosophies. The Garnet Trust Foundation, I think, is great because you can write the amount off your taxes. It's a 501c3. They do charitable work with the players. Like they'll go and they pay the players to do charitable work. I didn't want to get into that because that was just something that, as far as, I'm picky about my charities a lot, first and foremost. And secondly, I think doing charitable work sometimes is giving your own time and not necessarily making a finder's fee. But that's fine. I'm not judging them. It's just my personal philosophy. And I think all of our personal philosophies feed in to the NIL space. And so we find places we're comfortable doing it. And then Garnet Trust, too, is more about they do content, meet and greets, stuff like that, tied into GamecockCentral.com. And they were the first to the market, and they've done a great job, with that and their foundation. And then the final one is Park Avenue, and that's the in-house NIL thing. I don't know that you can give to it. I think they solicit like bigger money. They solicited big money funds to get it going operationally. Had to take it out of house because of the NCAA subcommittee, and they're a bunch of hypocrites, by the way. But my understanding is what you do is you just sever the business tie. I mean, you're a businessman, Chris. If you sever business ties and you're separate entities, there's not much they can do as long as it's severed. So they're going to kind of function in the same way, right, as they were. It's just not – they're not going to all work for University of South Carolina. It'll be its own collective, and with the years of experience they have, see what they do. What we all do, I think, is this. This is how kind of I define it. I'm at Carolina Rise. We do a lot of initial deals, like when guys first get to campus, like GG Jackson obviously had some value, so we got him an initial deal. There's been other guys baseball wise, and then we do a series of deals with current players. We did one with Jaheim Bell, right? During the season for football. Mainly, and we're about to expand that as we've grown. I think that the other guys, Garnet Trust, that's more something that like a large group of players can benefit from in certain ways, various ways with monthly deals. I know they took care of Josh Fan this year, which was outstanding. And then Park Avenue is going to be for guys that are like GG Jackson, Spencer Rattler, Jadeveon Clowney, who can go out and profit with major brands, connecting them with major brands, and they're worth it. They're big market value, and we're talking huge deals for these guys and gals to where they can make it, and that helps your cream of the crop in all sports, and also like your Olympic sports too. If you have a great tennis player out there that's thinking about coming to South Carolina, that's going to be, professional tennis, but it already has sponsors lined up and stuff, and he or she can legally get it here. Why wouldn't they come? So that's why I personally was excited about Park Avenue. What the fans need to realize is this: the Park Avenue thing is not a turnkey solution. Neither are any of the three collectives by themselves. Everyone is all kind of together and serves different roles. So if you just give a little bit and spread it out, that goes a long way. Or join the one of your choice, depending on kind of how it aligns with how you feel about NIL, because the opinions vary. So I know that's a long-winded answer. I just gave a speech here and I didn't mean to, but that's kind of the long and short of it. So I'd encourage everybody to give what you can. If you can't, everybody's still your friend, or should be. Nobody needs to shame anybody about this, Chris, because you're right. The fan base has done above and beyond this year, and with Carolina athletics for about a century and 25 years. So you can't blame anybody for not wanting to get on board, but it is needed. It is needed as far as the players go and the competitive landscape in the SEC and beyond.
JC, very well said. Now, I want to ask you a question. I'm not trying to put you in a corner necessarily, but I'm just curious because we've never really talked about it. NIL, transfer portal, whether you like it or not, this is the new era of college football. But I want to get your take. Do you like where college football is going? Like, are you a fan of this new college football? Do you, because it's again, you've been covering college football for quite a long time. I, your overall feelings, because I think there's some within the game that they're accepting of this new reality, but again, it makes them a little bit queasy. It makes them, it's not quite the college football they fell in love with growing up. Your overall thoughts on just the game itself and as it evolves and these the new realities that have set in.
Yeah, I think that people have different. As far as my feelings, I think people arrive at how they feel about it differently, and a lot just kind of depends on who you pull for. I think, and how their individual schools are handling it. But here's my thing: do I get up there? Did I get up every morning and check the internet and pray that they pass this rule so I could go start a collective? And no, this is not my dream job, folks. you know, uh, but I saw it coming, and I thought, oh, Carolina is not ready for this, and they started the one, and I started another, and that's how it went. So would I rather not have it? Yeah, I think that, especially with how it's been used as a recruiting indictment, and when I saw the Tennessee guys and they had 20 million in the bank and they're flying around in a private jet with orange blazers on, inking quarterbacks, I was like, this is going to get crazy, and this is tough. And I, even if Carolina were thriving with that, I probably would not love it because I don't understand. That's an inflated value. I mean, I used to do the star ratings. I would never invest that kind of money in something that I said, about a player, because it's an inexact science. Right. And so I don't care for that part of it, right? And I don't care for the narrative that, that this is market value for recruits or whatever. What I do care about and why I do like it is there was an offensive lineman, Chris, that streamed a show on YouTube, a cooking show, right? I think it's at Ohio State, big fan base, right? It's a hell of a cooking show. He'd sit there, he'd make food. The fans loved it. Never taught football, wasn't any kind of like interaction. And he had his Google ads on to monetize it. And the NCAA made him shut it down and said it was an extra benefit. So that part of it, I'm like, well, and some players have camps in their hometown and charge money for it. They couldn't do that before. And so that part of it, I think, is a very positive rule. Unfortunately, the NCAA fought all these ticky-tack things and eventually just got told, you're going to get sued into oblivion if you just don't, if you have any rules or guardrails at all. And so that's why we have what we have now. The portal, I like the one-time free transfer. I think they probably need to. I like the fact they shrunk it. I think what they probably need to do, though, is I don't know how you actually do this, but maybe limit it even further, because I think a lot of kids are making bad decisions. And then I think it's just going to be up to players, parents, and coaches to regulate it, because there's too many guys in the portal right now. Not all of them are even going to play football ever again, Chris. And so everybody that yelled and screamed and said this is best for players and all that, it's probably those same people are going to turn back around and start yelling about how the coaches need to take them back. And at that point, it's unsustainable because you can't manage a roster that way. So I think there's more tweaks coming, but I think that, the geniuses on the subcommittee that shut down Park Avenue also said, well, we should have no limits on transfers ever. You should be able to transfer as much as you want any time. And that would also be a disaster. So, I think it'll be further tweaked, but I liked it. I like it from the standpoint that it kind of could become an equalizer for a lot of schools. And with a 12-team playoff coming, it gives a lot of schools hope that they can add enough talent to their roster to compete. So those are my takes on that, dude. Heck, I wouldn't mind going back to the BCS, dude. I'm like not, I'm old school. So all this stuff is very new for me, and it's probably something I would have rather not had happened. But it is interesting, and I do see a path forward for the sport. That's pretty positive, as long as they don't take those unsustainable turns.
Well, JC, I didn't expect for it to be the final topic of conversation, but so much has happened this week.
Yeah.
But The Gamecocks are going to the Gator Bowl. I don't know if people may have forgot that, but there is a bowl game in a couple of weeks. I know we'll break it down more in depth as we get closer to it, but just your overall thoughts that South Carolina, for the first time since the late 80s, did land in the Gator Bowl, and you take on such a national brand like a Notre Dame. We've already seen a couple guys opt out from their side, a couple guys opt out from South Carolina's side. Spencer Rattler confirms he's playing, but again, we'll get into the details as we get closer. More so just your thoughts on the game itself. I mean, I think it's a great reward for a great season for Carolina that you, number one, get to go down to beautiful Jacksonville, Florida. You're in a Florida bowl game, and you take on such a national brand like a Notre Dame. I think it's great for Carolina football.
Absolutely. I think anytime you play Notre Dame, it's special. That's it's college football, man. You go to another country and you mention American college football, 80% of the people are going to talk about Notre Dame and the Gipper and Rudy and the Golden Dome and all that. And I think that South Carolina as a program gets a lot of mileage out of beating some of the bigger brands because Carolina's trying to achieve that, right? And I think that, when you beat a Nebraska in the Capital One Bowl a few years ago, that wasn't a great Nebraska team. Bo Pelini was wrong when he said they were better than Carolina. Carolina beat them, beating Michigan and then the hit and all that. They beat Michigan twice in Tampa. That's great. Beating Ohio State twice back in the day was great. Beating Miami to a certain extent in the Independence Bowl was great. Wins over Florida, whatever. The more scalps you can collect, the better. And Notre Dame's a big scalp. So, I think that's the deal. I think as far as the game goes, Drew Pine's out. He was their quarterback, and then they're very stud. I mean, I think Carolina's had some stud tight ends. This dude's on. Michael Mayer is out, so you don't have to worry about getting him matched up on Brad Johnson or somebody like that, and him just killing him. So he's out. So I think Notre Dame. I don't know what they're going to do to try to move the ball. My guess is it'll probably be similar to what Kentucky tried to do in that game with their quarterback out. Well, yeah, Carolina, if they show up and play and all that, I think it'll be like a sellout crowd, 70% Gamecock. And like I said, it's a chance to get a scalp and also give Shane Beamer the most wins in the first 2 years in the history of Gamecock football and a nice 9-win season. So with 3 straight big wins for the program. So that's kind of how I see it right now.
Yeah. And like I said, JC, we'll break it down much more in depth as we get closer to it. JC Shurburtt, Inside the Gamecocks, the Big Spur. Thank you so much, JC. And y'all be sure to go check out thebigspur.com to stay up to date because I know, JC, you and your crew, y'all will have everything in regards to the OC search and any breaking news. Y'all be sure to check him out. And, like I said, I'm excited to have you on every Thursday, be on your show every Thursday. I'm glad we're continuing this and chat with you next week.
All right. Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good one.